It's always a blast when we get the opportunity to talk about Duke men's basketball recruiting, and we love doing it each and every week with our good buddy Jason Jordan, Sports Illustrated and Locked On's Director of College Basketball Recruiting. We're going to talk about the class of 2018 for the Duke Blue Devils. Let's get right to it here on the program.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. It's so great to have you here with us on this Tuesday. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you so much for making Locked On Blue Devils your first watch and first listen each and every day. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to our podcast for free. Wherever you get your podcasts, you'll be able to listen to the show each and every day as soon as it's posted. Also, watch us on YouTube. Subscribe on the YouTube platform as well. Your support means the absolute world. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the class of 2018 recruiting for Duke men's basketball in another special edition of the Recruiting Look Back with our good pal Jason Jordan from Sports Illustrated and Locked On's Recruiting Insider. And as always, when we have these conversations, I need to make sure that we thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football and college basketball recruiting sponsor across the Locked On Network. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. All right, as we get going here on today's show, let me welcome in my good pal, Jason Jordan, to talk about the class of 2018. We keep getting closer to modern day here, Jason, but it's been a whole lot of fun to talk about these great recruiting classes for Mike Krzyzewski and the Duke Blue Devils.
Oh, yeah, bringing up a lot of memories, a lot of conversations, and, a lot of big moments. So that's always fun.
Well, we've got a big one today. We've got the class of 2018, a class that features the likes of R.J. Barrett, Cam Reddish, Zion Williamson, Tre Jones, and Joey Baker. When you think of the class of 2018 in Duke basketball recruiting-wise, how do you summarize it?
A lot of NBA talent. That's the biggest thing. We knew that back then. And so everybody was wowed by that because we knew that Cam, Zion, and RJ were, at the, lottery picks. Everybody they were projected to be lottery picks. And obviously, that came to fruition with RJ. And I think Cam was a lottery pick.
He was, right? Yep.
Yeah, so that came to fruition with those three. People felt like Tre would stay multiple years. But, he's gone on to do pretty well too. But, it was just a lot of people were, man, that's just so much NBA talent. And, a lot of people were like, oh, how are the shots? Are there enough shots to go around? But I just remember that being kind of the big, people were wowed by that. 1 and 2 in the class. I mean, come on.
Yeah, no, I thinking back on how this class came together, I can't wait to get all of the great stories from you in terms of how in the world did Duke pull this off? How did they get all these guys to play together and to want to play for the Brotherhood and for Duke University? Yeah. So looking back, I've got the info right in front of me, and I'm just going to put you on the spot here, Jason, to see how good memory serves. Of those 4 players, right? RJ, Cam, Zion, and Tre, the order in which they committed was what?
Oh, man. Okay. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Tre was first.
Okay.
I think it was Tre, Cam, RJ, and Zion.
That's what I would have thought, but Cam Reddish topped Tre Jones. Cam Reddish went on September 1st of 2017, and Tre committed in October of 2017.
Oh, I thought Tre was in August.
Yeah, from where granted, where I saw their commitment dates, I saw Cam listed September 1, Tre October 13th, and then RJ in November and Zion there in January.
Huh. Interesting.
I think that's wrong. Okay. I'm going to trust you. Okay. I looked at the internet. I went to their recruiting profiles on 24/7 Sports. I'll shout them out. and I
Oh
looked
yeah,
at their committed days, and
yeah.
and
I think
look,
Trey was in August, right after
okay, and
Houston.
Trey's Tyus's brother. We knew this one was kind of coming at some point. So tell me
Yeah,
about Tre Jones. Then we'll start with him because that's who
yeah,
you had first in your timeline.
yeah. Very similar to Tyus. Just did a lot of things. He did everything really well. True point guard. I mean, he was who you saw at Duke. Like he was that in high school. He probably scored a little more, but he was facilitator extraordinaire. Very smart, defensive. Locked the other guard down 94 feet. But just super heady. Always, that was the thing that kind of separated him from the pack in that class. And we were talking about how talk to Debbie, like, how do you keep breeding these superstar point guards? What are you doing? What are you doing? So Debbie is Trey's mom for
Yep.
people that don't know. So yeah, it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to Duke, though. I mean, I think, he flirted with some other stuff. I mean, I got a story that, when Duke went for the in-home visit, he had Duke stuff up in the room. So it's kind of like, I won't tell you who told me that story, but that definitely happened. From what
And
I hear.
that's fair. I mean, your brother plays for Duke just a
Yeah,
few
yeah,
seasons
yeah.
prior to that. Like in a lot of ways, I think that was almost expected. I like what you said, a foregone conclusion, but
Yeah.
every player wants to have the red carpet rolled out for them
Mhm.
to a certain degree and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But ultimately, at the end of the day, it was kind of bound and determined that Tre Jones would be a Duke Blue Devil, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there was much suspense on that one. But big pickup because to get that facilitator in that kind of class, that was monumental. Big pickup for sure.
Yeah. And what about the career Tre Jones had? I mean, played his first season there with this stud and started all year for the Duke Blue Devils as a freshman and then decides to come back for a sophomore season, was outstanding as a sophomore for the Blue Devils, really brought along the freshmen and Vernon Carey and Cassius Stanley and Wendell and Matthew Hurt and that whole
Yeah.
bunch, and goes on to win ACC Player of the Year
Yeah.
and ACC Defensive Player of the Year
Yeah.
in his sophomore season. That's insane that he was able
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's the thing, like that's the mark of a great player, if you continue to level up and you see how he just progressively got better, because he puts a lot of work in. Like he works very hard. It's not like, I think he would even say I mean, I think the IQ is probably God given, but he works tremendously hard. And I think even in that season, and then he etched himself in Duke. He was a Duke legend I remember I talked to him about missing the shot at the free throw line and
Yeah.
getting his own rebound and, making the shot in that game. And, and I said, if I gave you 5 more times to miss the shot and track the rebound down, like how many he said he felt like he could do it. Like he practices stuff like that. So I believe that.
Right.
He's a high IQ guy potentially. I mean, if anybody could do it, I would say that kind of player. So
Yeah, that shot is going to be one we'll remember forever. Of course, that's
Yeah.
only to force overtime, right? And
Yeah.
then there's
Yeah.
an attempt at the end to win it
Yeah.
that comes up a little
Wendell
bit short.
Moore.
And thankfully, Wendell Moore's in the right
Yeah.
place at the right time and able to lay it back in for
I
sure.
remember that. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Tre Jones, the lead guard for Duke in that class of 2018. Let's go on to Cam Reddish, and we'll talk about Cam right after this quick timeout here on Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils today is brought to you by our friends at Omaha Steaks. Omaha Steaks has cut prices 50% site-wide to make the gift-giving hero that you always wanted to be. The holidays are here. Achieve gifting greatness when you give the gift of perfectly aged, tender, and delicious Omaha Steaks. Omaha Steaks have put together a delicious selection of various gift packages to make shopping for the ones you love nice and easy. Go to omahasteaks.com and take advantage of 50% off site-wide. Plus, use promo code LOCKED ON at checkout to get an additional 40% off your order. Don't wait. Order today and beat the shipping rush. Go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code LOCKED ON at checkout. Moving forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, JJ Jackson alongside my buddy Jason Jordan, Locked On's recruiting insider here. Our conversation is brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn. So what about Cam Reddish? Cam Fam, as was very popular back in his recruiting days. Do you remember?
Oh yeah, I mean, Cam was a superstar. I mean, he's 6'7", 7'1" wingspan, played all five positions, but just his ability to, I mean, no, comes as no surprise that the biggest thing that stood out was his ability to stretch the defense and knock down shots. I mean, that's what's keeping him in the league now. That's what's made his name. And
Yep.
I would say that Cam was more of he's very quiet though. He wasn't a big personality. He just was a quiet guy who didn't like a lot of attention. But he had a big game, so he got a lot of attention. And so I remember it was touchy. Like it was, like I said, Tre was a foregone conclusion he was going to Duke. It was not the case with Cam. That came down to the wire, if I remember correctly, because he built a strong relationship with Calipari because he played for him for Team USA when Calipari was coaching the U19s that summer, and they were a strong contender for Cam Reddish, and a lot of people thought that he was going to go there, but I think in the end, he was just enamored with Duke.
Yeah.
Said he loved everything about him. Loved the brotherhood, and yeah, I think they really sold him on being that featured wing on the perimeter, which is always a dominant position in Durham. So yeah, definitely they pulled it off, but it wasn't I mean the old Duke Kentucky battle that was and that was certainly the case for another one in that same class.
Yeah, we've seen a million Duke and Kentucky
Yeah.
battles, and I think we're probably going to see a million more in the coming years and that
No.
sort of thing, given where these basketball programs are and that sort of thing. So Cam and Tre, 2 commitments in the class, and Duke's not done in the class of 2018. All right, I've got in November of 2017 is about the time that RJ Barrett announced his intentions to play basketball for Duke. Tell me about RJ.
RJ's different. So RJ kept a blog for me, RJ and Zion that year. So I was
those were your bloggers. There we go.
Yeah, my bloggers that year. So I talked to them a lot, talked to his dad a lot. And people forget, it was July. I remember he announced it in his blog that he was reclassifying because remember RJ was 2019.
Okay.
So after the summer we put it out that he was coming to 18. So he took over the number 1 spot immediately. In 2018, took it from Zion, and RJ, where I said Cam was kind of the laid back guy, RJ was the guy who was built for stardom. Like he was very, very media savvy, very very he had a lot of personality,
outgoing,
outgoing, but very much calculated in responses. He knew what to say. He knew what not to say, and he took a very business like approach to recruiting and recruiting news and stuff like that. So they had a plan, and he was one. I always reference him because he was one of those guys, and I respect this. In the summer, there's a tournament every weekend. He played for UPlay Canada in the EYBL. He was dominant. I mean, I think he led the EYBL in scoring. He literally dominated EYBL. But he would only play EYBL. Like he wasn't playing in no runoff tournaments. Like he would play this weekend. Okay, and then we got this in Vegas. No, I'm not doing that. I'm going to work out. Oh, then we got this in this month. No, not doing that. Going to work out. If he wasn't playing EYBL, he was working out. He was doing 2-a-days. And they were adamant about that. Like they were not gonna overwork him. He would, do the EYBL Peach Jam obligations, but then, he was out. But they didn't win a lot. UPlay didn't win a lot. They didn't have a great EYBL season like that. I'm not sure they made Peach Jam that year. If not, I think about it. But he was dominant. He was very dominant. He cooked everybody in the EYBL. And then he reclassified. And I remember Kentucky. Yeah, that was they were very, very, very much a contender for RJ. But again, in the end, K is K, and
Yeah.
he pulled that off, and history was made.
No doubt. And so they get RJ to join the class. Now there are three
Yeah.
people involved, and there's one player left to go, of course.
Yeah.
His name is Zion Williamson. He needs no introduction, but we'll start to introduce you to a young Zion after our final time out here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends at Built Bar. Built Bar is absolutely amazing. It helps me get my day started each and every day. 100% real chocolate, 17 grams of protein, and only 130 calories. All the amazing flavors that they've got coming out are outstanding, including cookie dough topper, coconut brownie bar, coconut brownie topper, you name it. There are so many amazing and awesome flavors of Built Bar available for you. If you go to built.com, you can get 15% off your order right now by using the code LOCKEDON15, LOCKEDON15. LOCKEDON15 is the promo code to use to get 15% off at built.com. Built, you got to try this. Found a few moments here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my buddy Jason Jordan, Locked On's recruiting insider. And of course, you can read his work with Sports Illustrated, and he's on Twitter at JasonNCJordan. So Zion is the last guy in the recruiting class playing at Spartanburg Day. Tell me your earliest sort of memories of Zion, Jason.
Yeah, so I remember. Okay, I always tell this story. I was at the Chick-fil-A Classic. Was this his junior year? I think after his junior year.
Okay.
I remember when Zion played for Game Elite. Before his dad got the team, his stepdad got the team. I don't know how he got his own team, but maybe his son was good. But he played for Game Elite, and I remember it was like, yeah, Zion Williamson's pretty good. Like he plays for Game Elite. And then there's this other guard, and I think it was something the Perry kid played, but they were about on the, it was like Zion's pretty good.
Right.
But it wasn't like Zion. It wasn't that. So I remember it was at Spartanburg, South Carolina, and he had a good game. He had like 15 points, got a lot of putbacks and stuff like that. He was just a workhorse. But I remember talking to him after, and nobody else was there. It was, just talking to him after, and he was like, yeah, I think I heard from South Carolina and Clemson, I just want to get more offers. That, like, this Zion Williamson, right? And I was like, oh, yeah, he's good. Not that I didn't discover him. Everybody knew all about him. I ain't saying that. I hate when people say that.
Right.
So, but he certainly was not standing room only Zion. No autograph seekers. So I remember that. Like, this is sophomore year. So, but I remember the difference. Good. It was going into his senior year, Chick-fil-A Classic, December of his senior year. So it was like the first tournament he probably played in the senior year. And he was still at Spartanburg Day, which is there where he's from. And I remember walking in, me and my dad was at the tournament with me. And it was like the line was, this is 3 hours before they open the door. Zion doesn't play till 9. The first game started at 5. So I'm going to say 2 hours before they open the door. I was getting there. I thought I was getting there early. And there are 600 people. They had already started letting people in. It was already packed. There are like 6, and I'm probably lowballing the 600 people in line that were never going to get in. They were never, there's this, you're not getting in. Like, and I don't know, but they let it, they let media in through a different way. I was like, man, I remember pulling up and my dad was like, is there a state championship game or something? I was like, maybe these people scheduled 2 things at the same time, but they were really here just for Zion. And so I remember that night he had 53 points. I still remember it. He had 53 points in this game. It was insane. Like I still have clips on my Twitter, like of his dunks and stuff like that. It was just crazy.
That's awesome.
So I remember after that, I did this big story, the story on Zion, like the background. So I spent like a couple days with him there. I didn't even go to the tournament. I was just there with him and his mom and his stepdad and his brother, and just great, unassuming. You could tell that he hadn't gotten to superstar. Um, he hadn't gotten to the superstar level mentally. But you knew it was coming. I mean, he had to be like walked out the back of the gym, that kind of stuff. So he was like a rock star, personality wise, still quiet, goofy, you know, very nice, always smiling. Didn't like a lot of attention, but understood his position. So he would give the people what they wanted. Like he didn't like to do those pregame layup line dunks, but he would do them because he knew they wanted to see him. This is from his mouth.
Wow,
So,
yeah.
you know, but he was big, man. He was prime time. He was primetime TV, well worth the price of admission. And yeah, it kept going. It just kept, every time you thought it couldn't get bigger, then he goes on the Kentucky visit. Drake's there. Drake starts following him. Drake wears a Spartanburg Day jersey. Still want to figure out how he got that jersey.
Yeah.
But Drake obviously aside to Kentucky, he goes to the Midnight Madness, the Big Blue Madness thing. I remember he blogged about it and he was like, yeah, I did, Drake was there, but NCAA rules, so I couldn't meet him. I was like, now you met Drake. Get it out. I'll turn the recorder off. But I mean,
Right.
I know you met Drake. Now I know you didn't leave there without meeting Drake. That's your man. Started, that was a big thing. Drake's following Zion on Instagram. So it was like a cultural thing. Zion was like, that's what made him, I would say, maybe the biggest, just because I remember we talked about Austin and those guys, and they were rock stars. Now, if social media was what it was back then, they would have been rock stars.
Right.
But Drake's Instagram at the height of Instagram, Drake follows.
Yeah, you can't top that. Yeah,
you couldn't top that. And he was the first one to, kind of get those things. And I think Drake followed RJ after, and he's from Canada. So yeah. I remember him going on those visits, but ultimately it came that. But I mean, we can get into that. But yeah, I know he was wowed by the Duke visit, and at the time they had everybody they had all the recruits in his ear by this time, and team up with me. Come on, you got to come with us. And RJ is in his ear. RJ is like the best to be in somebody's ear because he comes off like RJ comes off like Kobe, like I'm the best, I'm better than everybody. In a good way,
Right.
I'm not saying he, off the court like that, but on the court, he's very confident. And so he was always coming for Zion. He wanted to play with Zion. But the real formidable opponent was in his backyard, and that was Clemson.
Sure.
And everybody has heard, I don't know to the degree that people, but I think everybody on the planet thought it was Clemson until he said Duke.
Right.
Everybody but a couple. I mean, I know a couple people that, and I'm talking coaches that knew, but nobody else knew. Clemson didn't know. Clemson thought it was Clemson.
Right.
I know that for a fact.
And then he heads to Duke. Pretty awesome.
He said the brotherhood.
You think so was it the players? Was it the connection with RJ and Cam and Trey you think that ultimately won him over, or what do you think it was?
Yeah, I think it was all encompassing. He was very close to Capel.
Right.
Very close to Capel. And I can tell you that Capel was wee hours of the morning working that phone. Like you'd have to give that credit to Jeff Capel. That's Jeff. I mean, a lot of them are Jeff Capel. Don't get it twisted.
Right.
But that one,
because
it's a big one. You got to give that nod to Jeff Capel. And I remember, what did he say? It was like the Jay-Z line, more than a relief pitcher on the closer on the Jeezy remix.
Mm-hmm.
Capel text me the line. More than a relief pitcher on the closer. And this was before he sent it like 2 minutes because he knew I was about to put, get stuff ready. And I was like, he sent it like 2 minutes before that quote, right? I was like,
wow.
What? Right? And then he said Duke, and then Cable just sent like the wink emoji.
Yeah. He got another one. The brotherhood got another one.
He did, man.
That's
I'm
awesome.
telling you, man, that gym was like, what?
Right.
But yeah, Clemson thought it was done.
The guys come together, and we didn't see it this year, but a couple of seasons you'll see the Champions Classic be the very first game of the season. Like, this is your introduction to college basketball. Duke, Kansas, Michigan State, Kentucky, all taking the hardwood. And this was a year in which Duke and Kentucky were paired up, and they debut by scoring over 115 points and an absolute beatdown of Kentucky. What a game that was to remember their debut of college basketball.
Yeah, man, I remember that. Everything was clicking for them. It was literally like Team USA playing against like Argentina or something like it. They were they were doing anything they wanted. They were out there hot dogging it a little bit, like highlights galore, having fun, laughing. It looked like Kentucky didn't deserve to be on the court with them.
Right.
They really like dog walked them off the court. They smacked them. And I think Kentucky just couldn't handle that. They caught that blow, and they just were standing 8 count the rest of the game. Yeah, I remember that.
Unbelievable memory for them to come onto the scene. We've got a couple of other great games throughout that year, obviously, that come to mind with Duke winning the ACC tournament. You've got the game in Louisville with the massive comeback. RJ Barrett with the bounce pass between his legs to Cam Reddish behind him for the big 3 to tie it up. You've got so many just big-time Cam Reddish's game winner at Florida State comes to mind. And then the whole Zion Williamson experience that entire season was something else.
Yeah, I mean, they I would say surpassed the hype. Well, you can't surpass it if you don't win. So let me not do that. But as far as what the show they were going to put on, they put on the show. They put on the show. Zion did everything we thought he'd do and more. That I wondered if he'd get the 360 windmill in a game. He did. It was I've never heard Cameron that loud ever. Ever. And I'm talking even back to the Jay Will days. I remember Jay Will said the court moves. That's how loud it is. And, it was louder with Zion in them. He would probably say the same thing. But yeah, it was must-see TV, and I think everybody saw it.
A class that we're going to remember forever, and highlights that you're going to be able to watch forever because they're that amazing, and what a class it was coming together and making awesome things happen. Jason, it's been so much fun tonight being able to chat with you and kind of recap the class of 2018 for Duke men's basketball. Thanks for stopping by and doing this.
Always, man. I always look forward to the next one.
And that's our good pal, Jason Jordan, joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. And that's going to do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.